My name is Hannah Smart and I'm head teacher of ACE Tiverton Special School. We are a school that specialises in the support and education for young people with diagnosed autism spectrum condition and related social, emotional, mental health needs. So if I tell you that we started our school community in September 2019 as a brand new free school academy that was opening into a new build, you'll understand that the last 2 years have featured an awful lot of change and differences for our young people. And we have seen the impact not just of COVID and the lockdown experiences, but also that transition into a full-time school and educational environment, which for many of our young people was not part of their previous experience before coming to us. We support young people through the adaptation and differentiation of the national curriculum with a view to them achieving, in line with their mainstream peers, a range of qualifications that put them onto a pathway for post-16. That means that over the last couple of years, our aspirations and expectations for the experience our students would have had with us as they settle into their learning and education with us has been very different from that which we mapped out in September through to Christmas of 2019. The introduction of the lockdowns, first of all, was a very significant event, not least for a brand new school community, but also for a group of young people for whom consistency, routine and regulation are absolute mantras by which they live and are able to survive and thrive. We were able to very quickly put in place a number of remote educational models, as well as a remote package of pastoral and wellbeing support, because for us, our school community was only 3 months old at the time of the first lockdown. We did not have the robust relationships and the history that many school settings would have been able to benefit from in that move to online and that move to a more remote experience. So we spent an awful lot of time investing time, effort and energy in visiting young people, going to see them in their home, working remotely through our remote education platform, but also ensuring that we were providing students with the opportunity to continue to meet and have social experiences, as well as delivering core parts of their EHCP, which by definition is required in order for students to make progress and meet their needs educationally, as well as growing young people. Crucial for us in the effects that we've seen on pupils has been a distinct lack of resilience. And we say that in the context of young people who previously had had tricky educational experiences. Many of our young people had been out of education for a while before joining us in September 2019. And actually resilience is a skill set that we were working on and had central to our work with them from September to Christmas. What we've seen is not so much resilience during the period of lockdown being affected, but the educational muscle, the skill set that enables our young people who already struggle with social communication and interaction to work alongside peers and adults where they are not on preferred topics or preferred learning styles or even preferred people. That area of their resilience has led to some significant issues of peer-to-peer conflict and also a impact on their overall educational performance, because those consistent routines have been stopped and started and stopped and started. And the ability for our young people to switch tasks mid-lesson, never mind switch their educational provisions mid-year, is a really tricky challenge and something that we have taken a step back to enable our young people to be able to boost their reserves of resilience, but also to experience really positive social and educational experiences. So our curriculum has been affected by the need to provide young people with a variety of experiences across their educational landscape, really, with us. So whether that is the core subjects, English, maths or science, or whether that is their social and communication skills, the effect of the lockdowns has been that the lack of consistency and the lack of routine, combined with the overarching anxiety that has been an increasing element of young people's experiences over the last couple of months, as well as previous to that in the last academic year, has brought us to a point where the key effects on our young people has been the negative impact of anxiety, lack of routine and inconsistency in the predictability of relationships, and experiences that previously they have been able to predict. The impact of our staffing changes and the need to enable staff to meet the needs of their family whilst also meeting the needs of our school family has been at times in direct conflict, where schools have had different opening and closing routines and families have been affected of our staff members. That's had a direct impact upon the quality of support and the consistency of presence that some staff have been able to affect. So over the course of the last 2 years, we draw together some key threads in our assessment of the impact that COVID and lockdowns has had on our young people, and they fall into the following categories. It's challenged their resilience, and it's led to a draining of that resilience reserve, which has also had implications for their quality of social communication, because actually it's really tricky when you're not sure what's going to happen next, or who might be in or who might be around, or whether you might have to self-isolate, or whether you have to take a test. In order to be able to access your learning, you need those anxiety levels to be as stable as possible, and the strategies that you know work to be as consistent and available to you as possible. So over the course of the last 2 years, that lack of consistency, that increasing anxiety and unpredictability has united to affect the resilience of our young people, which has had a direct impact on their ability to access their learning skills and to prioritise those tricky concepts, interactions and skills that don't come naturally. So we have seen in some cases a default to behaviours that are potentially maladaptive and about avoidance rather than about rising to the challenge. So overall, the effect for us has been that we as a school community have had to reframe our focus so that everything comes back to positive relationships and positive experiences. We've had to compromise in some cases the breadth and depth of our curriculum to ensure that core skills are maintained and students do not lose out on the key aspects of their EHCPs. And we've had to ensure that our staff have as much as possible the resilience and fortitude to be able to see through the behaviour that is a communication of the anxiety and worry that young people feel. So all told, the effect has been to prioritise the social, emotional and mental health of our young people alongside their special educational needs, whilst aiming to continue as much of the curriculum as possible so that we're not building up a bigger problem in the forthcoming couple of academic years where closing the gap then becomes a priority. So the constant juggling and the consideration on an hour by hour basis at some points as to what staff is available, what students are present, and also ensuring that all of our families and staff have their emotional and mental health supported, because it's not just been something that's affected our young people. We can see the effect of COVID and the lockdowns in every area of our school community. Whilst we have a recovery curriculum, I am concerned that that becomes a fixed object that people hang a lot of hope and aspiration on. And the reality is there isn't a curriculum or a single set of strategies or even a multiple set of strategies that will help young people recover. There's an awful lot nationally about catch-up tuition and about extension of school days. And actually, when we look at our young people, and for us, ours are some of the most vulnerable young people that we can educate across our school community, what we're seeing is the need for time, space, processing, and talking. And whilst I understand entirely that there are multiple demands on many of our children and young people's services, particularly when it comes to mental health, we as a school team are having to make decisions almost hourly and lesson by lesson as to whether our best next step is to insist on learning and to insist on curriculum access and skills knowledge and subject knowledge, or whether our best next step is to simply be, connect and attune with our students, because particularly as we're getting towards this point of, so say, Freedom Day, the amount of anxiety that people are expressing and the amount of exhaustion that people are feeling seems almost disproportionately large, and the sense that that is something that will be recovered from by doing more almost feels counterintuitive. What we've seen with some of our most vulnerable young people and with their families and staff as well, is that actually the best thing we can do is to listen, give some space, and to seek solutions alongside them. So rather than doing it to the young person or doing it to the school, listening and understanding as to what will best suit my school community and family, which may be very different from what will suit our neighbouring mainstream primary, for example, but we're not being asked directly. We're taking opportunities when they're presented, like this sort of interview, but actually what sits at the bottom of this is a desire by every head teacher to meet the needs of their school family on an individual and appropriately targeted basis. It is a statement of fact that unless a young person feels safe and has their basic needs met, their ability to learn is compromised. We've been through and are still in an extreme place where nothing feels safe, and therefore the basic skill set that our young people have got access to is really, really reduced. And as a special school, we have chosen to take a focus on relationships, connections, attunement. And that means that what we're doing is we're assessing the young person, we're meeting them where we are, and we're approaching them with that playfulness and loving approach, the acceptance and curiosity that we know is central to making connections. But even with all of those high level skills in place, some of our young people are really, really affected by the last 12, 18 months. They're not ready to read because they find it really tricky, and they've done a lot of tricky stuff over the last few months. They are full of things that are tricky, and they are full, their buckets are overflowing almost with the worry and the anxiety that in many cases they've kept under wraps because they know everyone else is feeling really stressed and really worried about stuff. And crucially also that people don't have answers. This is a new experience that we're collectively having as a global community, and that sense of adults not knowing, whilst it's really helpful for some young people who want us to be honest, is also really, really traumatizing for other young people who need to know that the adults in their lives have the ability to keep them safe and to speak from a place of experience. So when I'm asked, what do my young people, their families and my staff need? Time. They need people who understand that young people are not simply metrics to be assessed. And they need to understand that it's not just a sense of recovery that we're looking to achieve, but to a certain extent, a sense of restitution, that not going back to where we were is important, but going forward from where we are now and taking with us some of the learnings of the skills that we've all needed to be able to get through this. Whilst it might sound trite, actually, a lot of us have spent the last few months learning new skills. Whilst one may argue that the curriculum is a new skill, it's not always a topic of preference. Where are we giving young people space in the curriculum currently to explore what they're interested in, to seek answers or to find out new skills? Making sourdough may seem like a really middle class solution to a lockdown problem, but actually, where in our curriculum, nationally or at school level, are we encouraging an interest, excitement, and curiosity about learning as an experience? What we're trying to do is to say, how do we catch up? What we're trying to do is to say, how do we make up for what you've missed? If there's no race running, which there hasn't been over the last 18 months because each school's been doing the best that they can, how is there anything to fall behind in? For me, the answer to what do our young people and our school families need is this. They need to be heard, they need to be met where they are, and they need to be given the time, space, and support to process the hugely complex emotions that everyone has felt, on the basis that schools who are being asked to meet the needs of the young people are able to do so in the best possible way. And for some, that may mean reducing the breadth of what's learned in order to achieve and thrive in the areas of preference. It may be about focusing on preparation for adulthood in a manner that isn't just about achieving a collection of results at the end of year 11. And it's also about a truth that we need to universally acknowledge, that with the way the exam system has been operating over the last couple of years, the value of it has changed in not just those people that are subject to it, the young people and the teaching staff and their families, but also those people who are looking to employ or to take our young people on into the further steps of education. Recovery is not going to be a straight line graph. Recovery is going to be a roller coaster, and recovery is really not what we're trying to achieve. Restoration of a sense of safety, a sense of self, a sense of reliance on ability and skill, ultimately a confidence in one's own ability to survive and thrive despite the global circumstances we find ourselves in. That's what we're looking to achieve. And actually teaching young people that they've lost out, continuing the message that they are behind, all we're doing is creating a narrative that does not reflect the reality that schools are seeing up and down the country. We are seeing passionate, driven, motivated young people who are taking the experience of the last 18 months and putting themselves at the centre of, so what can I do? What will it look like for me? How would I manage as an adult? And what I would ask is that we consider a curriculum that enables that to happen, that doesn't do to them, but walks alongside with them. Because recovery is a lifelong process. And this is something that we need to skill our young people up to do every day, every week, every month, every year of their lives to come, not just now and not just by the end of year 11.